Fancy intro music, yeah! Woo!
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we got a special one because I can't just do it myself. I had to bring in I've got DJ here. So two dads with lame jokes. How you doing, buddy?
Meow. You know what? I'm grumpy today. I'm DJ Grumpy Cat still DJ Grumpy
Anybody
Cat.
that's been on your Twitch channel has definitely been getting a lot of grumpy DJ Cat lately.
Well, I mean, when I have things to be happy about, I can be happy. When there's not things to be happy about, then that tends to manifest in the community. And Rev, I think we're seeing that.
Yeah, so what we wanted to talk about together today is what DJ and I are going to do in terms of our plan of action and what we think about this research. Because I just made 2 days ago, y'all went crazy, y'all enjoyed the video. Not necessarily want y'all to enjoy negative videos, but enough is enough. DJ has had similar sentiments in his podcast, Talking Trek, stfc.space, if y'all haven't checked it out already. We want to talk about a little bit more detail what both him and I are going to do to face this. And yeah, we'll just start from there. One, we got to acknowledge that they did make a change this morning before you and I made this video.
They did, Rev, and I appreciate the fact that they feel like this makes a difference. But it feels to me more like this was a token offering and does nothing to address the actual chief complaint of what people have been talking about, which is ROI, the cost, right? The cost compared to the benefit.
Yeah, I'm going to use, you've had a great example. I'm going to, because when I mentioned this the other day in my first video, I didn't really go into the spend cost. I blanket said, look, this is where we already have this research elsewhere. And you'll talk about this a bit, this video, that some of these researchers already exist, but even with increasing the research does not actually increase its value. Take, for example, the one that I have in the background, Riker's Fist. It has 10 levels and now maxes out at a 60% bonus. It was 40% when y'all first saw it 2 days ago. Now, Tactical Aggression, which is from the away team's tree, is 45%. But the biggest key here that is getting lost, as you mentioned, is the cost. Riker's Fist will still cost you, not counting your efficiency researchers or anything, almost 20,000 4-star uncommon crystal, over 6,000 uncommon 5-star crystal, and over 2,000 rare 4-star for a 60% boost that is essentially negligible in today's game because of all the other researchers that we have.
The percentage buffs, I understand that there is a balance, right? They can't make them so overpowered that the previous research is nullified, but they can't also, by the same, on the other side of the same coin, they can't make them so ineffectual that there's no real benefit for doing it. You are still asking for material investment. You're still asking for time investment into this loop. And in every case that we've seen so far, straight up cash investment.
Yeah. And you had an example that you've been sharing, and because it comes from your favorite tree. And while I agree with you that your tree is amazing in terms of what's in it, I hate the grind of it. Speaking of trees with heavy grinds, tell us about your example that you've been sharing with your followers.
The hill that I'm dying on, Rev, is parts efficiency. Now, I am slightly unfairly looking at the faction survey parts efficiency, because in fairness, that is a new one. We don't have any parts efficiency in the game whatsoever, but I think that it's fair that we can draw a little bit of correlation to other parts efficiencies for other style of ships. So for example, there's a 25% boost to parts efficiency in the galaxy tree. But you know what? Even if you look at the galaxy tree, Rev, if you just back up 15 columns in the galaxy tree, you've got a research there for warship or interceptor, a battleship, interceptor, or explorer that offers a 50% parts efficiency. And assuming, and this is going to be slightly different for everybody, but if you look at what you're going to spend on that after your efficiencies, it comes to roughly 75, maybe 80 G3 uncommon and roughly 35 to 40 G3 rare, and you're getting 50% parts efficiency. You take a look at this new expansion where they did raise it from 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
All right. So not 50% and not 75 uncommon and 40 rare. You're now looking at 15% with efficiency, Rev, to max that out. 10 levels, 15%, 27,000 G4 uncommon, and probably just shy of 1,000 G4 rare. That is my huge problem. I understand that the bonuses are not enough. I understand that we want them to be more. There does have to be balance with that. But the sheer ROI, the cost investment is just so disproportionate. It is so out of touch. And mathematically, Rev, this is going to blow your mind. It is real. People are going to think I'm making this up. It is a 40,000% increase in cost. 40,000, 27,000 uncommon materials, where I got over double the benefit for 75 uncommon a year ago. You can't even say it scales with the time. I expect it to be a little bit more, but this is not scaling with time. This is scaling to a whole nother universe.
And this is why it brings up the next point you and I talked about a lot these past 48 hours. Scaling the buffs will not help because it's going to create its own problem. So let's say that we match the buff scaling to the cost. Well, this would now become, it would basically eradicate every other research that we already had, making them essentially pointless. If you scaled all the buffs by 40,000% to match what the cost is, well, you just create the most overpowered tree in the game because, as we talk about all the time, you have a diminishing return with research in that it's more better worded as a dilution. When you have 100% and then you add another 100%, it doesn't feel like the 100% did as much before because they simply add together. So you can't take these and just drive the buffs up and give, you know, that pure Federation survey a 200 or 300% bonus, which still is nowhere near, the 400 times increase we just talked about. But you do have to address the essential problem, or at least redirect that attention. I appreciate the attempt of trying to do something, right? We talked about that, but that doesn't actually fix anything, and it's still ignoring the base problem of this tree.
And I agree. It's like, they made this change thinking that it would help justify the outrage or quell the outrage regarding this tree. But they missed the mark. They shot at the wrong target, Rev, because the buffs, what we're getting, the benefit, it is important, right? We want to see a tangible benefit. Seeing a 0.5% net return on a research is disappointing. But I have said in the past, it's a game of nickels and dimes, and I still believe that it's a game of nickels and dimes. No one research should completely outweigh another tree. But, when you take that one research that's going to give you 1% net return, it needs to at least be somewhat comparable in its investment, because that's what they shot at the wrong target, in that the complaint was not necessarily the amount that we're getting from the buff, but the amount that we're having to invest in the buff to get there compared to the previous researches.
And there's also the other, like you and I are hitting on the uncommon side of this, but there's also the other side, which is the fact that this has its own currency for the entire spectrum of this extension of a research tree that is time gated or paywalled. And we mentioned paywall because of the time. I mean, I was talking to Eco about this. At level 42, I'm going to roughly get 600-ish Rhodinium a week to total out. And granted, I can't research this entire tree at 42. There's some that are locked at 43. But by the time I was maxing out, you're talking about 500,000 Rhodinium particles. It would take me 16 years. So there's also not only the aspect of the uncommons, there's also that almost like you feel like you have to invest into a purchase to get you the progression that you need. Whereas before, even, there's one thing that I love that I've learned a lot from, some of the higher levels of this game is they'll tell me, look, we'll gladly spend because we want to, but not because we have to. And the length of time, because of the particle bottleneck here, makes you feel like you have to spend to find any progression if you wanted to go into this tree.
This example of the latest research tree that's come out is a perfect example of why the G5 players have been upset for months, Rev. The pace of progression is unreasonable. These players are willing to spend. They still do spend on their progression. But if, for example, and not to dive too far off the beaten path, but, a G5 building that may cost $700, $800, $900 that didn't cost that in the G4 or G3 economies, this is a further exaggeration of that, because it's even more now. I mean, there are individual researches that will cost hundreds of dollars for a 2% or a 2.5% net yield. Not even net, sorry, a 2% increase to the bonus. And these researches are going to cost that. Now, I mentioned this on the podcast. There's a couple of ways you can fix this. Even with the original bonuses, Rev, if they had launched this with Rhodinium only, make it like the away team's tree with the service medal. If they had done that, I would have probably not been as fussy. It's still a long time, but we have proven with Syndicate XP, we've proven with Trade XP that sourcing will increase over time. There's no way that intelligent game design would have come out with a feature that takes 16 years to max. It will increase. I mean, there's no way that we can ignore that. It'll definitely go up. But because the materials are used in so many other facets of the game, that is the largest bottleneck. You remove the materials entirely, Scopely, then this tree may be slow, Rev, but becomes acceptable.
Yeah, I have no argument with that. I honestly have not. It's the Rhodinium adds a time wall to what also exists a paywall. That'd be the best way to put it, because not everybody has the ability, as we talked about with yours and mine, spending 20, 30,000 per research, taking that out of their economy, which would be better spent. I'll be honest, if you are a higher level player right now and you've got the option between, do I dump this money into my North Cut, or do I dump these resources into my North Cut or into this research? It's no question you're getting better value dumping it into your North Cut.
You're 1,000% right, which is why, you know, we have been listening to the community and why I've personally made a choice. You know, now we've talked about this in the past, and I'm not defending the menu of options, because this menu of options is terrible. But for me, it is simple. I can be angry about it, and I am. But for me, it's really simple. I will choose to completely disengage. I'm not, listen, somebody even told me level 1s for power, and they just use common, so it's only Latinum. And I'm scared of that, Rev.
Agreed.
I'm scared of that. I mean, listen, does it provide me maybe a little bit of power or help me with an event? Sure. But, dude, if Scopely sees people engaging in this tree, then they're going to see people engaging in the tree. If people adopt this mentality, even at the early levels, that's a scary thought to me. Me personally, I want my voice to be heard, Rev. And for me, my choice is even the level 1s, even the great power, even the fact that it's only common materials. I will not engage. I personally choose to disavow this expansion because it is not good. If you look at the amount of materials you'd have to sink into this thing, for most players, even G5, even the G4 players, this will literally slow your progression to a fraction of what it would have been prior to 72 hours ago. If you try to build evenly and you try to build up, this is going to slow you down. You know, we've talked about the benefits that the G4 economy has experienced over the last 2 years, and by no means is it fixed, but it is better than it was 2 years ago.
Agreed.
This update takes us back 2 full years. If you engage in this tree, you will move at the progression or at the expense of what G4 players did 2 years ago.
And I want to be very clear to everybody that me and DJ are not telling you how to play, but simply giving you what we are going to do. Because I don't think everybody realizes, like, we all know that obviously a gaming company is going to track the amount of packs they sell. That's obvious, but you might not know they actually track engagement of events, engagement of new things like the research tree. So one way that you and I are going to speak out, as I said, as the title of this video, we're going to just simply ignore it until they make the changes necessary to justify it being worth our time. Because at the end, this is supposed to be a game. It's supposed to be fun. You and I both spend way too many hours a day in it. And this is not worth our time right now.
You're exactly right. It's not even about, I mean, I want my voice to be heard, Rev, and it's not even about sending a message. It's not about me being angry and you know,
which we are, by the way.
We are, but it's not even about.
Yeah.
If you take all the emotion out of it, Rev, mathematically,
it's just a bad addition.
0 cents.
Yeah, it's not good.
0 cents from a mathematical standpoint. The amount of stuff that you're going to put into this is not going to get you the same benefit as it would have putting it into other researches or your ships or your buildings. It just mathematically makes no sense. The ROI is not here.
We will be stronger players if you and I ignore this and those resources we were going to spend went into ships, buildings, and the other 6 research trees. And it's not even close. It's not like we're, you know, trying to nickel and dime. The amount of ROI here is negligible compared to even, and I'll say this to support, because everybody knows that I've always been a unhappy camper when it comes to the level of grind the outlaw tree can have. When I tell you that Rev would gladly do the outlaw every single day and dump into a brand new version of outlaw that was copy and pasted instead of doing this, I would. Rev would go out there and just do Stella every day if I could get another value that the outlaw tree provides long term. And this one just simply doesn't have that value. And I'm glad that your example pulls from that tree, because I pulled from my two favorite trees, away teams and territory. Your favorite is outlaw. And whichever is your favorite, this easily just made Galaxy one of the worst long-term values because of what they added to the end of this.
Hey, you're absolutely right. These three trees that you mentioned, territory, away teams, outlaw, they provide tangible benefit. And even though the grind is bad in outlaw, I agree with that, it's tangible benefit or reasonable investment. And there's nothing about this Galaxy expansion that anybody could define as reasonable. It's just not.
So there you go, players. This is what DJ and I are going to do for this. You know, we're obviously going to talk to y'all. Any comments that you have, any questions you have, feel free. If you want to know the math of where we're getting on this, if you want to see the numbers besides what we've shared here on the screen, let us know. It's our job to be your voice. But this is what DJ and I personally are going to do to ignore this and to deal with this. And we'll see what happens in the future. And hopefully Scopely listens to not only your complaints, our complaints, the VIP's complaints, but the community as a whole, which I think for one of the few times we have got complete unification across the board that nobody really likes what's here.
You know, Rev, was this supposed to be a whale arc? I got to tell you,
it's a nobody arc.
It's a nobody arc.
It's a nobody arc.
Everybody across all segments are equally as annoyed by this, and Scopely has got to take action. You really have to.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.